Ever tried something kind of like for the first time and realized that you actually really sucked at it? Because like the first time you ever did it, it really just didn't go as well as you planned, and you kind of felt like a shame with it, a shame in saying like, "Oh, I'm not really good at this. I should really just not try anymore." I've been there, so that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Let's go. Hey, my name's Gian. This is the Why Approach podcast. And so if you haven't been here before, this is where we just talk about multiple lessons that we've gone over in life, that I've learned in life. And I know that if I learn something from it, someone else might probably can too. And honestly, here we honestly prioritize value over virality. So I don't really care how many views this gets. I just care that it brings value to whoever may watch it. All right, so let's dive straight in. So, like I was talking about just a second ago, basically trying something for the first time, failing exceedingly and abundantly great at it, and not actually doing really great at it. And so you kind of feel like that kind of shame in something like that. And so originally, I wanted this question or this topic of this podcast to really kind of be like, what's the difference between shame and guilt? And some people may get it, but I honestly wanted to start off with this story, similar to what I was describing to you beforehand. So, as you may not know, I'm actually a content manager for a guy who's a finance coach who works with nurses. Very great guy, super awesome. Like we're doing a lot of great stuff, and so I got promoted to being the content manager for him actually about maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and so it's been a wild, a wild ride, and so when I started, I thought, oh, like I've probably done it before. I've done my own social media thing before. If you can check, like even on this channel, even on the previous podcast, if you're on podcast land, like you can see all the previous podcasts that I've done here before. And I don't really want to delete it because I just want to show you where I started, how bad I was, and maybe how bad I still am. And so um just been doing it, and I was like, okay, I may got it. Like I think I got this. Like I think I could be pretty good. So I said yes when he offered the promotion to me, because I started off as an appointment setter, and then now I'm a content manager for him. And so I started out, was writing out scripts for videos for him to say, pretty much because he's like a personal brand, that kind of thing. And wrote out a few scripts, maybe wrote out a few carousel posts and stuff like that. And then like honestly, they sucked like beyond belief. They sucked so much. Like my copywriting was super terrible. Didn't speak anything like him, obviously, because I only got hired for them like at the beginning of this year. So I've only known him for like 6 months at that point. Well, not even 6 months, 3 months at that point. And so I sucked so bad at it. And thank the Lord that he was just graceful enough with me to just be like, hey, that's not really how I talk. It's like, I wouldn't really say it like that. Or I even just got the personal finance knowledge just wrong because he's a finance coach. And so he was just like, yeah,
Yeah, that's not exactly what I teach.
um, but
You got the gist of it.
and so he was very graceful. But even then, even with all of his grace, even with him being super forgiving and super like a great boss, I honestly just felt still very stupid. I felt like an idiot. I felt like, man, like, should I even be doing this? You know, should I really even be doing this? And I really thought to myself, I was like, should I go back to my position as an appointment setter? Because I was like pretty good at that, but I'm not so sure about this new position. And I just kept thinking that over and over. And I could feel the thoughts coming into my head, just thinking that over and over and over again. And man, it was tough. It was really tough. But the one thing I wanted to point out is the fact that things did change, right? So I started out, did terrible, right? And immediately, once I realized how bad they were, thoughts started to creep into my own head. Thoughts of me being inadequate, me should be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. I should give up. I should move out to somewhere else. I should do something different. That kind of thing. And I recognize that now in hindsight, and that is a portion, that is a way of shame, pretty much. And so shame and guilt are two different things. Now, moving into this, shame and guilt are very two different things. And so a lot of people don't understand the difference between the two of them. And so the two of them actually are just this, they say similar things, but it's still different, and they have very different results as a result of what you get from each of them. So normally that happens whenever you do something bad, you know that you did something terrible, or like immoral failure, whatever like that. And so first comes guilt. Guilt is like saying, I did something wrong. I stole something, or you're guilty, right? Guilty of a crime. You did something that was wrong, so you need to be accountable for it. That is guilt. That's pretty healthy because, like, that happens. But the difference is shame, on the other hand, says, I am wrong. Rather than I did something wrong, like guilt says, it says, I am wrong. I am terrible. I am this, or whatever like that. And so, what I started to notice when I was failing at first with my content management job, I said to myself, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I should probably quit. I should probably move into something else. I should just, give up and move on and go do something else because I'm not worth the time." That's what I said to myself. Okay? That's what the thoughts that were coming into my head, anyways. And that's the difference. Because guilt, what I would say, is healthy, pretty much. You got healthy guilt. You got to acknowledge that you're wrong at some point. Like if you do something wrong, you did it wrong. And there's no ifs, ands, ors, or buts with it. You did something wrong. Okay? However, with shame, it's a whole different angle. It goes straight to your beliefs. And what happens is when you take in that shame, you basically attribute that to yourself. You're saying an I am statement. You're saying, like, I am physically, like, this attribute of what my failure was is directly connected to who I am as a person, which ultimately is not true. I can tell you that for sure is not true. And so shame does a lot more damage than guilt. Guilt can get you to change real quick, can get you to, oh, I did that wrong. Maybe I can see what I can do better next time. Or what should I learn from this mistake? Shame says you are too far gone because you made a mistake, so you should just give up entirely. Entirely of being a good person, entirely of just being a great content creator or manager or whatever like that. You should just give up because you are that mistake rather than you did the mistake. And those are the two very different things that shame and guilt really say to each other. And I know a lot of us really take in shame a lot more than guilt. Because I was having a small group, literally in this same house, and I was asking the people who were there, and I was just like, we went over the same thing, and I was like, how many of you would you say that you take in shame a lot more than you do guilt? And all of them said yes, all but one actually. And I was like, that seems pretty normal because shame comes to all of us. And I'm here to say that shame isn't where you want to be. Okay. As you know, I'm a follower of Jesus. And so we always sin. We all fall short. We're not perfect people. I think anyone can understand that. We're not perfect people. We all do bad things. We all sin. We all do horrible things because we aren't perfect, and unperfect people make mistakes. And so since we mess up often because we're not perfect, a lot of times we are guilt. We have guilt of something because we did something wrong. Now, Jesus, in fact, he died on the cross to forgive us from all of our sins. So we have that point of reconciliation with God at that point. However, there's something that can also hinder all of that entirely. It can make you literally like a Christian who is super unconfident, super unbelieving, and like loves the Lord, but still doesn't feel loved. It's when they believe shame, because they can be forgiven, right? But they won't forgive themselves because they see themselves as the mistakes that they do or that they made. And so they continually see themselves as the mistake they made. They will continue making that mistake because they're like,
Oh, well, I'm already a horrible person, so why not?
I'm already like a terrible dude, so why not do this? I'm already this, I'm already that, so why not do this? And that's the problem that we see, like with a lot of people, because we mess up once, then we have that kind of attitude of just like, oh, if I messed up once, then I can mess up again because I'm already that mess up. when that's not true at all. Literally, like at all. Because you are so much more than just your mistakes. Because you are not your mistakes. As a follower of Jesus, I have to say to every single one of you, no, you are not a result. You are not the product of your mistakes. You are the product of your actions and your habits. Yes, whether they're good or bad, that's depending on what it is. However, you still have the power to change what you're doing and to change what your future looks like, even with or without God, because we have free will. Now, with God, it can be a whole lot easier because He gives you His power, He gives you His strength, He gives you mental discipline, everything like that. Like it can be a lot easier and you can have a lot more hope. However, without Him, it's just a little bit more difficult. Not a little bit, probably a lot more difficult. And so it's still possible. It really, really is. And you are not your mistakes. You are the result of the habits that you have, and probably the reason that you do all of those mistakes, because and they probably form habits, is because you continually see yourself as a person who has shame. You associate yourself with a mistake. You associate yourself as a mistake. And so your confidence goes low. You don't look at yourself really great. Your self identity is very, very low. You don't really look at people in the eye when you talk to them because you think yourself so lowly, when that's not where any of us is meant to live at all. I'm not meant to live by that, and neither are you, because I know you were called for a purpose and you can be forgiven. And if you are, dude, if you are forgiven, then you have nothing against you. The only thing that you have against you is really everything that you have against yourself. And that's the problem, because I had the same problem. Like I mentioned before, I've had a crippling porn addiction for like 10 years of my life, and I'm 21, so that's about half of my life. And so I had that kind of shame. I knew I was forgiven, being a Christian and being raised in church and everything like that. I knew I was forgiven, but I still found myself keep doing it because it was an addiction at that point. It really, really was. And so I saw myself as a person who was a porn addict, or for a better word, not a better word, but a worse word. It's just like I saw myself as dirty. I saw myself as like someone terrible, like who couldn't even keep a clean mind in anything that I ever experienced. And honestly, that mental attitude kept me in the same cycle of pornography and sin and masturbation and everything like that over and over again, because I already associated myself with that. I saw that there was no way out because this is not who I am. And I can try and try and try and try and try, no matter how hard, but I'm still believing the lie of shame. And so if you're believing the lie of shame, you're constantly keeping yourself in a rut of just negative behaviors over and over and over and over and over again. And that's not the way to live, because then you are the one keeping yourself stuck in negativity, stuck in pain, rather than the actual thing that's keeping you stuck. Because it's not the actual activity at that point. It's part of you. Now, obviously with addiction, there's multiple factors in it. But I'm saying like me being shameful of myself did not help me in any way at all. Like I could have been way better than what I could have been. And I could have probably gotten out of that addiction way faster if I actually understood and believed and knew for a fact that I'm not my mistakes. I'm who God calls me to be. What does He see me as? He sees me as a person who's made holy in His image. Yeah. And that I have a future, that He wants me to have a future, and that I can still change my life. I still have the power to change my life because I have the power of choice. Every one of us has the power of choice. And we can either choose to believe shame, or we can choose to take in the guilt and then change our ways because of the guilt, right? There's one thing to actually not listen to shame and listen to the guilt, but then there's one extra decision when dealing with guilt. It's to then use that guilt to change what you're doing. Because if you're going to keep doing the same things you're doing over and over again, guess what? You're going to keep keep feeling, keep experiencing the same exact thing over and over and over again. Now, this is something I really go by in my entire life. And this is a saying. And it's basically, if you want the life, if you want the self-confidence, if you want the body, if you want anything else that no one else has, you're going to have to do things that no one else is doing. For me, I'm 21. A lot of 21-year-olds are going off partying, going off doing different things. A lot of things that like many people would say like,
Oh, you're in your 20s. You should do that. You should go have one night stands. You should go to the clubs. You should go drink the heck out. You should do everything like that.
But I'd rather not. Honestly, I'd rather not, because I know where my future is. And my future is definitely not in that, because I know that I want to be an entrepreneur. And with this content management job, I'm getting the skills I need to do in order to get to that place. And I wouldn't be getting closer to my goal if I was doing what everyone else is doing, because they're obviously not going to get to that goal. Do you really think drinking and clubs and partying, everything like that, is going to get you to a place where no one else goes? Because everyone does that. The only way that people get unlikely results if they do unlikely things in their day to day. The only way that you're going to get the body of your dreams is by exercising. And if you're with people who want the body of their dreams, right? But they're overweight or out of shape, and they're like, oh man, I wish. But you actually want it. And so you're going to have to exercise every day, not every day, probably like 4 to 5 times a week, and dedicate probably an hour of your time to exercising your body. And then, only then, and probably after 6 months or even more, you'll start to finally see results. And that's how life works. And it's the same thing with guilt and shame. If you consistently keep putting onto yourself over and over and over the shame, you're gonna disqualify yourself from even trying in the first place. Because if I saw myself as a person who was not worth of anything, and my dreams of becoming an entrepreneur, I saw so far away from me, like so far away from me. I saw that I could never even achieve those things until I changed my mindset, until I changed my beliefs, until I dismissed the lie that shame tells us and actually appreciated the truth that guilt says, this is wrong, you should probably change. There's something wrong with this and it needs to change. And then I look to the word of God for the truth. That's just for me personally. Like, if you want results that no one else has, you're going to have to do things that no one else does. And so many people look at me like when I say this to the students and whatever, they're literally just like,
whoa, that is so wise.
I'm just like, you didn't know this before? Like, if you want results that no one else has, you're going to have to do things that no one else is doing. Because, at least to me, no other 21-year-old other than the people who've already been super famous is actually doing this stuff. And I'm not here for virality either. I'm not. I'm just here to give value, which is just my experience and the lessons that I've learned. Because I know someone can actually learn from all of this. And so, remember, you are not your shame. Okay? You're not. You're really not. You're not your shame. You're not your guilt. You got to understand that guilt is a tool that you can use to then understand how to improve your life, especially when you're walking with God, walking with Jesus. You got to understand when you sin, you got to repent, which means turn away, turn completely in the opposite direction and go straight towards him. Right? When you sin, you turn away and you're like, okay, I got the guilt from that. Shame is trying to come my way, but I'm like, no. I'm not my own mistakes. Okay. But I'm going to continue moving forward and I'm going to continue moving towards Jesus because I think that's where I need to be. He has my purpose. And if you're not a believer, congratulations. You're not. I'm just sharing it from my own personal view and the people who hold my personal view. And still, if you don't, I love you. Literally. This still applies to literally every single person, whoever can watch this, which would probably be one person, but whatever. And so That's pretty much it. That's it. Don't believe your shame. And remember, I love you guys so, so, so very much. And if you like this episode, go watch another one. Like, literally, somewhere over there. I don't know. Maybe over here, maybe over here, somewhere around here. I'll decide it in editing. Yay. You got to start growing and start now. And God bless you guys.